302,000 people just formally asked to leave Canada, and the Prime Minister hasn't said a single word, not a statement, not a press conference, not even a tweet. And that silence, that deliberate, calculated silence, may be the most dangerous political decision Mark Carney has ever made. Because when you ignore 302,000 citizens who have put their names on paper asking to leave your country, you are not being strategic. You are handing the separatists their best recruitment line for free. If this story hasn't reached you yet, stay with me, because what happened in Edmonton on May 4th changes the math on Canada's future in ways that most coverage is completely missing. I'm going to walk you through exactly what happened, what the numbers underneath the headline actually say, and why an independent Alberta would have the third largest oil reserves on Earth and a land border with the United States. But first, if you follow Canadian politics or North American geopolitics, tap like right now. It tells the algorithm this story matters, and frankly, it does. Here is what happened. On May 4th, the Stay Free Alberta movement arrived at Elections Alberta's office in Edmonton carrying boxes of petition sheets, 301,734 verified signatures. The legal threshold required to trigger a formal response was 178,000. They nearly doubled it. Every single provincial constituency was represented. Rural communities, small cities. Edmonton, which historically leans toward Ottawa, contributed tens of thousands of names. This was not a regional protest. This was a province-wide declaration. The petition asks one question: should Alberta pursue independence from Canada? And under Alberta law, once a citizen's initiative clears the threshold, the province must formally consider putting that question to voters. Elections Alberta now has 60 days to verify the signatures. If validated, the petition moves to the provincial legislature for a vote on whether to hold a referendum. Premier Danielle Smith controls that legislature. Her party holds 49 of 87 seats. Her office released a statement so legally evasive it could have been written by a committee of lawyers told to say everything and commit to nothing. We are reviewing the submission in accordance with provincial law. No timeline, no position, no direction. Which means the single most consequential political question in Canadian history right now has two leaders who are both saying nothing, and one of them is the Prime Minister. Here's the number that should make Ottawa lose sleep tonight. Support for outright independence sits at 28%. That is not a majority, but it is a 20-point jump from a decade ago. And then there's the number that transforms the picture entirely. Another 31% of Albertans say they would consider voting yes, depending on the economic terms. Only 41% said they would definitely vote no. Read those numbers again. Less than half of Albertans are firm no's. The outcome of a referendum depends entirely on what happens between now and a vote. The economic climate, Ottawa's response, the terms of the question, everything is still in play. And if you think the referendum is a distant hypothetical, consider this. If verification succeeds and the legislature approves, Alberta could see a referendum ballot as early as October 2026. That is 5 months away. 5 months from petition to potential vote on leaving the country. Now, here is the part of this story that almost every outlet is treating as background, when it is actually the centerpiece. Alberta did not build this movement overnight. 3 years ago, in December 2022, Premier Smith passed the Alberta Sovereignty Within a United Canada Act, a law that allows Alberta to refuse enforcement of federal policies it deems harmful to provincial interests. Ottawa challenged it in court. The case is still pending. Critics called it a backdoor to secession. Now, with 300,000 independent signatures delivered, those critics look exactly right. The Sovereignty Act established the principle. The petition extends it. If the relationship with Ottawa cannot be changed from within, Alberta has declared it has the right to leave. The legal architecture is already partially built. The political machinery exists. The signature infrastructure spans every constituency, and the separatist movement has 2 independent MLAs in the provincial legislature, a digital outreach operation, legal experts, drafted frameworks, and organized rallies in Calgary and Edmonton that drew thousands. This is not frustration. This is infrastructure. The comparison most analysts are missing is not the 1980s Western Canada Concept Party, which fizzled when oil prices recovered and Pierre Trudeau left office. That movement was built on anger. Anger fades. The comparison that matters is Quebec. Quebec held 2 sovereignty referendums. The first in 1980 lost 60-40. The second in 1995 lost by less than 1%. 50,000 votes separated Canada from fracture. Quebec's separatist movement has remained a living force in provincial politics for 3 decades since that near miss. If Alberta votes no by a slim margin, the separatists declare a moral victory and come back within a decade. If Alberta votes yes, Canada faces an unprecedented constitutional crisis. The only outcome that does not destabilize the country is a decisive no, and the polling does not suggest a decisive no is anywhere close. Now add Washington to this. The State Department publicly calls this an internal Canadian matter. Behind closed doors, every relevant office is tracking it. Alberta exports nearly 3 million barrels of oil per day to the United States. Most flows through pipelines to refineries across the Midwest. If Alberta left Canada, those energy flows require renegotiation. That is not a theoretical concern. That is an operational one. Texas Governor Greg Abbott told Fox News in March that his state would welcome stronger ties with Alberta. He did not elaborate. He did not need to, and connect that to something this channel has been covering for months. In January, the Trump administration held direct meetings in Washington with Alberta separatists. At the time, it looked provocative. With 302,000 signatures now delivered, it looks like preparation. An independent Alberta would be the wealthiest new nation in the Western Hemisphere by GDP per capita. It would hold the 3rd largest oil reserves on Earth. It would share a land border with Montana. And it would need a trading partner who is not Ottawa. Washington is not waiting to see how this plays out. Washington is already deciding which outcome it prefers. Here is what most people get wrong about how countries actually come apart. It is not anger that breaks them. Anger fades. What breaks countries is arithmetic. When a region calculates that it pays more to stay than it costs to leave. When the transfers flow one direction for decades and the benefits flow the other. Alberta sends roughly $20 billion more to Ottawa each year than it receives back in federal spending. In 2023 alone, the province contributed $19 billion net into a system that redistributed those funds elsewhere. Quebec collected $13 billion in equalization payments while blocking Alberta pipelines. Ontario received infrastructure investment while Alberta's pipeline projects were cancelled. This is not abstract grievance. This is a ledger. And a ledger, unlike ideology, does not forget. It accumulates. And what has changed in the last 24 months is not the anger. It is that the benefits of staying have eroded while the costs have increased. The trade war with the United States. The diplomatic fallout from the China deal. The housing collapse destroying household wealth. Ottawa's response to every one of these crises has been experienced by Albertans as inadequate in ways they can measure directly. Through their energy revenues, their blocked pipelines, their equalization obligations. The 302,000 who signed are not acting on emotion. They are acting on math. And when a political movement stops being emotional and starts being mathematical, it becomes very difficult to stop. Carney's silence is itself a calculation. He is betting that the petition fails verification, or that Smith refuses to call a referendum, or that the persuadable 31% break toward no when confronted with the genuine uncertainty of independence. He is hoping this fades. That is a gamble. And it is a gamble built on the assumption that Albertans will choose the stability of a system that has not delivered for them over the uncertainty of a system that might. History says that assumption holds most of the time. But history also says that when it fails catastrophically. And 302,000 signatures suggests the margin is considerably thinner than Ottawa believes. Because signatures are not poll numbers. Polls are passive. Someone calls, you answer, you go back to your life. Signatures require action. You seek out a petition. You read the question. You put your name on a document that says you want your province to leave the country you were born in. 302,000 people did that. Across every constituency over 8 months. That is not frustration. That is a decision. And Ottawa's silence in the face of that decision communicates exactly one thing. You do not matter enough for a response. That is the message Alberta has received from Ottawa for decades, and now 302,000 people have replied on paper. I do not know if Alberta actually leaves Canada. The constitutional barriers are real. The economic uncertainty is genuine. The majority is not there yet. But the distance between a petition and a vote is far shorter than the distance between frustration and a petition. Alberta just crossed the harder line. 5 months to October, 60 days for verification, and a Prime Minister who has said nothing. Countries do not fracture with a single crack. They fracture in the silence between what a government says it stands for and what 302,000 of its citizens have decided to do about it. Now I want to hear from you. If you are Albertan, what made you sign or what made you hold back? If you are from another province, do you take this seriously, or do you think it fades before October? And if you are American, how does this look from your side of the border? Knowing what Alberta's oil means to your refineries? Drop your answer below. Every perspective in this comment section sharpens the picture for everyone watching. If this gave you something the headline missed, hit like. One tap tells the algorithm this conversation deserves a wider audience. We track how this story develops daily, so if you are not subscribed yet, this is the moment. The next update may be the one that changes everything.